Happy New Year and welcome to Capitol Square. I'm Jim Heath. In just days, Ohio will have a brand new governor. John Kasich has proposed bold ideas in wake of a huge state budget deficit. Earlier, we sat down with the governor-elect at his transition office in Columbus. Unlike his predecessor, Kasich seems ready, anxious perhaps, to take on unions and government bureaucracy. This transition period between Ted Strickland and John Kasich has not been smooth. Sniping on issues from the three-seat passenger rail train to school calamity days has created an awkward, some would say icy handoff to the governor's office. Governor, good to see you.
Thank you.
I want to say first, I know your time, particularly during this transition, is limited, so thank you very much.
You know, Jim, to be honest, you know, this job is it's great, and I'm busy, but we're not frantic. I mean, it's just I've always been busy for many, many years. I've been doing so many things.
Right.
So this is just another thing to do. You know.
It leads to the first question of: are you surprised? Is this transition what you expected? It seems like there's been a continuation to some degree of the sniping of the campaign that has rolled over post-election, a few issues that continue to be back and forth.
Jim,
is it what you expected?
I pay no attention to the criticism. I just, look, I mean, I just don't. I couldn't even tell you what they say. I don't pay attention to it. No, look, I have to stay very focused. There's a lot of people that are hurting in this state. There's, the state has, look, we just read the other day, we're losing more population than every other state except for a couple. We know that our foreclosures are up. We know our unemployment is just stubbornly high and just catastrophic for a lot of people in a lot of parts of this state. Worrying about somebody playing politics, they're just midgets, so I don't spend a lot of time looking at, you know, at snipers and whiners. I just don't have time.
Let me ask you about this pending $8 billion problem that really has been on your mind and on the mind of a lot of lawmakers for months now. Senator Voinovich on this very program a couple weeks ago said emphatically that he did not believe you could fill that $8 billion gap with just cuts. He feels it will take a tax increase. How is he wrong? I mean, he has sat in your chair. I mean, he's been governor of the state, and from his perspective, it's just too big to do without some revenue and some kind of tax increase.
Well, look, the last guy I'm going to fight with is George Voinovich, but the answer is real simple. We can keep raising taxes in this state and driving jobs and people out. Now, what kind of a formula is that? Because every time we raise taxes, we become less competitive. And as we become less competitive, we lose more people and we lose more businesses. And as we lose more people, more families, more businesses, we get to be poorer. So tax increases are not an option. It will continue to make us less competitive. But if we can run this government, you know, as a business, and look, I mean, George hasn't been here for a long time. He hasn't been over the books. I haven't even seen the books yet, you know, because the numbers haven't been put together. But you get to the point where it's not an option. And I think the people have spoken, not just in Ohio, but across the country. Our problem is not that we don't have enough revenue, it's that our spending isn't working. And look, everything I look at around here now, I look at it and I say, where is the common sense? You know, why are we not working harder? I make phone calls today, CEOs want to talk to me. I talk to them, I tell them how we're going to be business friendly. They're stunned. They don't even get, you know, when they can't even believe I'm calling them or returning their call. There's just a lot of things that have not been done right. We're going to run Ohio like a business, and frankly, we're going to reduce taxes under 6% for the income tax. That's what the law provides come January, and we're not going to raise taxes because it makes us less competitive. Now, we also have to get rid of the rules and the regulations that hamper businesses, and also create a brand for Ohio that it's just too hard to do business there. We need to look at the legal system. I saw where Governor Perry is proposing a loser pays legal system. I kind of like that. We need to open up our universities to commercialize products. We have a lot of knowledge workers. If we could keep them here, there's so many things that we can do. But to adopt a policy that makes it harder for people to do business, that makes it more likely for businesses to leave and more likely for people to leave and families to leave, that's the wrong prescription. So everybody's got to be into doing their job a little bit better. And it's not just about cuts, Jim. You know, everybody talks about cuts. Be a lot of challenges here, but make the program work better. You know, you've heard me talk about prisons. I mean, why do we lock up somebody who's in prison less than a year and put them in a prison next to a murderer, increase the recidivism rate or the rate at which they return to prison, and make them worse? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
You're very optimistic. One thing I've picked up on covering your campaign is that you always present that optimism. But let me kind of go back. I mentioned Voinovich. Let me mention incoming House Speaker Batchelder, who's also on the program, who, when asked whether he expected protests in the coming 6 months as this budget is formulated without any question, he said yes. As you look ahead, even with optimism, these are going to be tough times, right? I mean, do you envision communities, the education community, maybe other groups and what have you, as the real budget begins to have foundation? Do you expect, as you look ahead to June, that there are going to be some angry Ohioans who might show up at the State House?
Look, and hopefully we get a lot of really happy Ohioans to show up at the State House. You know, the people who pull the wagon, they never show up. It's always the people who ride in the wagon who are always the ones coming saying, you know, keep pulling. I want to ride, you know. Look, there's some people who are going to have legitimate concerns about the budget, the same way we had legitimate concerns from people about welfare reform when I was involved in that, okay? That turned out they were wrong, but they had a legitimate concern. But there's also the snouts in the trough crowd. You know, the ones that, look, I don't have any doubt in my mind that part of the people that complained about me killing the train to nowhere are people who are going to get contracts. Somebody's got to speak up for the people that go to work every day. And look, I won the election, and everybody knew what I was talking about, Jim. There's no surprise here. So, you know, people, they got a right to protest, you know, but there's also people who work every day who might find their way to protesting in favor of what we're doing. But you, as a leader, you just don't sit around and worry about the people that are, you know, yelling and screaming at you. Do the best job for the people of the state.
Think ahead 1 year from now. The budget is settled.
No,
just a little bit of this. I mean, what ultimately for the people of Ohio, where do you want us to be positioned?
I just want us to be. I want people to say Ohio's changing. It's becoming more business friendly. There's a lot of great assets there, and you know, I want to give Ohio a chance. Right now, they don't even. We're called a flyover state. You know. Now we're really a flyover state. It's a flyover state, not even looked down. So I want them to think, hey, Ohio's a cool place, and restore our great brand, which I know we can do.
A few quick kind of general questions here. If government employees go on strike over these cuts, should they be fired?
Government employees should never strike.
Why not?
I'm opposed to it. Well, because that's not their job. They're public servants. They're not supposed to go on strike. You know, no, I don't favor the striking of public employees. I don't favor the striking of public employees in police and fire and schools or anywhere else. I don't favor it any more than Reagan favored the striking air traffic controllers. If you don't like your job, I can't fix that. I think, you know, in a time when we have 10.1% unemployment and maybe much higher underemployment, thank God you've got a job. Be a good public servant. I mean, don't try to hold the public hostage. No, I do not favor strikes by public employees. I favor collective bargaining.
I was just going to ask you that. Collective bargaining's been around for 30 years.
They can collectively bargain. And let me tell you, when they passed that law, it was complete partisan. Republicans had no say. They rammed it through. And God bless them. They were in power. They did it. We're going to change the law. That's reasonable. We ought to change a law every 30 years, I think. Take a look. Let me give you an example so that people understand this. We have a provision in our cities called binding arbitration. That means that you bring somebody in from another place and they determine what the labor agreement is without regard as to whether the taxpayers can afford the agreement. So then the costs of the cities keep going up, people keep paying more, the cities become less competitive to locate businesses. That's not a very smart program. I'm going to fight to eliminate binding arbitration. It just shouldn't be there. And you know what? A lot of the big city mayors, it's kind of funny. I thought they'd be, you know, kind of yelling about this a little bit more. I think they like it. Anytime a management
surprised by that?
I think it's just nice. I mean, surprised. I don't get surprised by people saying, "Hey, this would be good," because it is a good idea. If management control their costs a little bit more, then it helps them with the taxpayers and the community. No different with businesses. You have to be able to control your costs.
Kind of raise another issue as we begin this new year, a statement that you made recently about transparency. Let you try to clear this up, because obviously the media took that personally. But your suggestion was not if there's a question of nepotism or something like that among government employees, people that are salaried by taxpayers.
Sure.
I mean, you would not disagree that transparency would be good
Look,
then.
people should know what their government is doing, okay? But let me give you a good example. I ask people, if you want to come work for the state of Ohio, send us your resume. Now, if you're looking for another job, you're not that smart to go in and tell your boss you're looking for another job. That doesn't like settle real well with the boss. So all I was asking for was the privacy, and once we pick somebody, you have the right to know whatever you want about them. And, you know, to a limit again, I mean, things are common sense. And yet I'm going to be forced to have to release those resumes, which could work to the detriment of the people who submitted a resume. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about extreme when we cross the line and it doesn't make common sense. And so when it comes to transparency, open records, yes, I think we should have them. But let's talk about school boards. You know, they go meet in a coffee shop somewhere because they have an open records law. People are still having meetings. I'm sure they are, okay? And it's just that let's have common sense and let's push for people to know what's going on. But let's not get carried away and in the name of some worship at some mountain called transparency.
Up next, we'll talk to Ohio's next governor about guns, unions, and the Humane Society. That's when Capitol Square continues.